Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the TopMusic Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hello, teachers. I hope that you are doing well during this busy season. Today is a really fantastic interview that is going to give you practical ideas and resources for teaching beginners and beyond. Rebecca is a gem of a piano teacher, and her love for her students and for teaching comes through strong in this episode. Here's a little about Rebecca. Rebecca Stewart grew up listening to her three older sisters practice their musical instruments. She delighted in her childhood music lessons and wanted to teach young children in a fun and creative way. Her piano teacher at Melbourne University recommended the Yamaha method, and Rebecca taught with Yamaha Music Education Centers from 1998 to 2018. She loved being a national teacher trainer with Yamaha and enjoyed opportunities to travel to Toronto and Tokyo for Yamaha teacher development events. In 2016, Rebecca went to Jakarta, where her 8-year-old Yamaha student performed his original composition at the Asia Pacific Junior Original Concert. Rebecca's first book, Sight Reading Secrets Grade 1, was published in 2004, and there are now 9 books in the series. In 2023, Rebecca worked with Tim Topham in developing the TopMusic certification program and continues in the role of head of certification for TopMusic. Here's my interview with Rebecca. Rebecca, welcome to the show. It's so nice to have you on. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners and tell us a little about your teaching studio?
Sure, Rachel, no trouble. I live on a farm on the far south coast of Australia with my husband and my 4 kids. And I teach 40 students, some of whom are online, some are at a school, and some at my home studio.
Great. I didn't know you lived on a farm. What kind of farm is it?
Sure. So we have 70 acres and we are taking care of someone else's cows. We also have 2 ducks and a goose, chickens, we have budgies. Yeah, it kind of became a bit of a menagerie.
That's so exciting. I live right in the city now, but I grew up in the middle of Kansas, which is all farm country. So I go back there and visit my sister's farm occasionally. But this is not a farming podcast, so I guess we better talk about piano teaching. I want to talk about your recent experience. You recently had the privilege of speaking at the Autumn Piano School, which is a piano conference there in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about the conference and what your topic was?
Sure. This was held at the beautiful New England Conservatorium in Armidale. So because I live in the middle of nowhere, I had to catch 2 planes to get there. And it was a beautiful old building, which I've since found out my husband's grandparents both studied at Teachers College back in the 1940s. Beautiful building with stained glass windows and a big auditorium. And we had each day was filled with children coming along to group lessons with Kadai lessons and ORF and movement and theory and piano performance. Every day they had multiple lessons rotating, and simultaneously they had streams for adult amateurs and a pedagogy stream as well. So I really enjoyed teaching the piano students who I'd never met before. That was a real buzz. We had individual lessons and group lessons, and I had some sneaky notebook beginner 12-bar blues improv with them as well. And I gave a pedagogy lecture that was titled "The Perfect Beginner Method Does Not Exist." So I spoke about my journey of 20 years of using Yamaha curriculum and then moving to the country and starting from scratch.
That sounds like such an exciting conference. Most of the conferences here in the States tend to be just for piano teachers. So it sounds like this was for students and adult learners and as well as teachers. Is that right?
I think that if they hadn't run it for so many different kinds of people, they wouldn't have had enough people to run the event. But this way, people were traveling, teachers were traveling with their students and their families. So teachers could go to the conference, students could go to the conference, and then it culminated in a student concert. So the teachers got feedback from us and so on. I just really, really hope to be able to go again.
That sounds so exciting. Can you give us just a couple of the highlights from the conference for you?
Sure. I had one little student come in and he was leaping all around the room and dancing and moving and jumping and so on. And my little spidey senses went off and I thought, oh, I wonder if this student would like some creativity and some movement and so on. So I enjoyed, that was a highlight for me, having this student just walk in and me having to assess in just a few moments what kind of lesson we were going to have and what would best help them thrive. I also really enjoyed watching other teachers teach. I mean, we just don't often get the chance to do that. So I was able to sit in and be a fly on the wall and see some other teachers and get ideas from what they were doing with their students. So I'd love to see more of that in conferences.
I agree. It's so valuable to see other people teach. We get a little bit stuck in our ways sometimes, and just seeing someone else and seeing, the way they describe a hand position or a technique or something, it'll trigger something. And that's something that you can take home and use in your lessons later.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You mentioned that you taught for many years using the Yamaha curriculum. What was it like when you no longer were using that? Maybe you can give us a little more background about teaching with Yamaha, and then tell us how you transitioned from teaching with Yamaha into creating your own lessons after that.
Yeah, so I worked with Yamaha for 20 years, and this beautiful curriculum is only found in authorised Yamaha schools, which in Australia is just in 4 big cities. And I'm now 8 hours from Melbourne. So I had to start from scratch, and I went on this hyperfixation rabbit trail when I moved here, researching what was available because I'd never used a method book. So the way that I learned as a child and the way that Yamaha teaches is kind of like this. If you imagine a really imaginative and creative introduction to a piece, and then the teacher performs a beautiful model performance and it inspires the child to want to learn that piece. And then we sing the music with the teacher so that the expression and the rhythm and the pitch are all internalized. So that when a student comes to play it, it's expressive and rhythmic right from the start. And then they confirm exactly what it looks like on the score and all the connections are made. So it's joyful and expressive and creative and involves keyboard harmony and composition, even with young children. So I miss Yamaha teaching very, very much, but I'm grateful that I still get to be Yamaha grade examiner and have contact with the school that way.
Okay, that gives me a clearer picture of what you were doing. And then talk about, how long ago was it that you transitioned out of teaching with Yamaha?
Sure, 6 years.
6 years ago. So what was it like going through that transition where now you were going to start your own piano studio? You'd been doing this for 20 years. I'm just imagining feeling maybe a little overwhelmed, not sure where to go. So where did you turn?
Sure. Well, I actually did go spend a lot of time buying books and looking through books and doing pros and cons. And I'm sure that's what led me to ask other teachers in TopMusic membership why they use particular methods. So as part of certification, actually, we've ended up asking teachers, what do you use? What do you like about what you use? And so on. So other teachers can not have to do all the research that I did. They can watch a video, an interview with a teacher in our Method Book of the Month series, or they can come along to certification and build their skills in assessing what method's going to work. But it's about the particular student as well. So because I start my students off with no book beginners, I love the connections that I make with students over several weeks and months while we improvise and we sing and we play. And then during that time, I start to imagine which approaches I think will help that student thrive. So there are lots and lots of questions that go through our minds when we're starting a beginner. To do with their development, their learning, their personality, what they're expecting out of lessons, what their family's expecting. So I think I ended up thinking about all of these different questions. Will the parents support them in their practice or not? Will they be able to have an app that they use, or are they not really going to use technology at home? How small are their hands? How big is their keyboard? Do they have other siblings in the house that they'll be competing with? I actually have a list of about 100 questions that go through my own mind when starting beginners.
That's so fascinating, Beck. I feel like we could just end the interview right now because you gave us so much information in that answer. And I love it that you are taking that time to assess the individual student and then, going back to all the things you researched and putting the two pieces together. So can you give us a little bit more about what beginner lessons look like in your studio now?
Sure. So we all start with no book beginners. It's all improv and singing and fun and play and games and a chance for the student to be able to play straight away and express straight away while I kind of work out which approach I think will help them thrive or which combination of things will help them thrive.
And then do you have a couple of favorite method books that you tend to gravitate toward?
Yes, I knew you were going to ask me that question, so I thought I would introduce you to a few of my students. And sorry that listeners don't have photos, but I'll try to paint a picture with my words. So first of all, Hannah. Hannah's mum learned piano and even taught for a while, I think. But she has high levels of anxiety when she's playing in front of others. So her deep desire is for Hannah to love learning and be comfortable composing and performing. Hannah's really intrinsically motivated to learn lots and lots of new things all the time. So I needed something with a lot of material in it. She has really strong fine motor skills and is able to track the music visually with confidence. So I knew that technique and sight reading would be a big focus for her. So Piano Safari has been really motivating for Hannah. The combination of technical development and creativity happening alongside strong reading foundations. So actually, Hannah was my first Piano Safari student. And since then, that has been a big theme for many of my students. So I started out 3-year-old Jethro with Piano Safari Friends. Have you used Piano Safari Friends yourself?
I have. I have never taken a student from beginning through the book. I used it as a supplement to other methods.
Yeah, well, with Piano Safari Friends, like the other Piano Safari books, the technique development is woven into the course, but it goes very carefully using non-thumbs for longer than most resources. If you think about how small a small hand can be, that can be really great when they're still developing dexterity, which my little Jethro is. So follow the leader pieces have been a big success with him. They're kind of like rote pieces, but they don't rely on memorization. It's kind of copycat type thing. And like the other Piano Safari books, the animal approach was really great for Jethro, being 3, with animal characters having different names, Zechariah, zebra, and so on. And they start to recognise the rhythms orally as well as visually. We often sit and dance or sit on the mat, and we have little animals, squishy toys that Jethro can bring out of the basket and then clap and so on. So that was really great for his development and age and so on. I also wanted to mention siblings Benji and Ashley, because they're siblings. I wanted to be careful that they weren't competing using the same book, but I didn't want the parents to be juggling multiple different methods and apps and logins and so on. And these are kids who both love to sing. One of them found reading English was really frustrating, and I wanted to be careful that reading music would not be the main focus, the first focus for these students. So we use Encore on keys with the primary material for the older child and the junior material for the younger child. That's an Australian developed material. And then we sing each piece in solfège before we learn it. And they could listen to recordings at home and so on. Actually, one of my students at the end of book 1, she wanted to keep doing the singing, and the next book didn't have as many lyrics in it. So for Sophia, Piano Adventures became a big hit because she could sing every single song. She had to sing it, and then she was happy. So if you have a student that's happy, they've got a motivated student. So, and one more. So students for online lessons, when we had to find a solution back then, in 2020, I wanted a way for students to be able to listen to recordings in the room they were in, not just over the internet, not secondhand. And I wanted to be able to really easily screen share and annotate and so on. And my student Zachary, for him, supersonics. It has the reading approach with repetition of visual patterns, a bit like sight words. So he can recognise the pattern is going G, F, E, D, G, F, E, D, because he's seen that pattern so many times. He's quite a little jigsaw puzzle prodigy, this one. Recordings are great. He can listen to them, and that's been really helpful for his rhythm development and sense of beat, which were not so apparent when we got started. And obviously, Supersonics has some really cool music like Dungeon Run and Sneak Attack and backing tracks and visual scores and lots of things in an app. So kids who want cool stuff or kids who want tech, that's a really good combination. But it's important to know your student really well, because there's no use assigning something that you want them to use the app with, scroll along or whatever, if the parents are going to say, oh, no, we're not going to use tech. So this has been part of my journey to work out, well, which things will suit the most number of criteria, I guess, for each student.
Yeah, that was so helpful, Beck. I wish we could go through like 10 more methods, but we won't right now. But it also probably keeps the lessons more interesting for you, not to be teaching the same book and the same songs over and over and over, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be a bit overwhelming thinking, oh my goodness, I've got all of these possibilities. What am I going to use? But I mean, it's important that you choose music that you really like. If you love it, then that's going to hopefully rub off on the students as well.
So what advice would you give to teachers who might be really tied to one particular method book?
I think sometimes it's because we're very comfortable with one particular thing, but in membership at TopMusic, when we have a method book of the month course, you get this opportunity to watch a video of somebody explaining why they love their particular method or one of their methods. And I think when you see somebody explain why they love it so much, it helps us to think, well, maybe that's worth investigating. If it's something that the students will be really motivated by, it might be worth investigating. As part of our TopMusic certification program, last year we actually surveyed teachers and created a graph of what materials they love, what the pros and cons were for each, and also as part of their portfolio. So teachers had 12 one-hour video sessions with a whole group of us. We were collaborating and discussing and working together on tweaking our own teaching. As part of the portfolio, they were able to present things that were happening in their own studio, illustrate how they would use one particular method over 5 years or so with their student and what would happen by the time they got to that stage, but also to look at some case studies like I've just given you, really, and to work on those case studies thinking, why would I approach this particular student in a different way? So I think certification is a great way to kind of broaden our horizons in what is possible, and also to think carefully about what we're doing. But in terms of a method book, our students don't come to us because of the book. They come to you because you are you. And when you know each student individually and consider their development and personality and their family, it helps you connect with them and enjoy collaborating musically with them and have fun with them and help them to thrive. So, method books and the bells and the whistles and the tech and the toys, they're tools. And you as the teacher, you're the one with the passion and the intellect and experience and understanding and musicianship. So as Christina Whitlock would say, the teacher is the method.
Yeah, that's so true. You have such a beautiful way of stating all of that. That was really nice. Tell us some of the creative things that you do with the beginners in your studio. You mentioned the notebook beginners, but after that, once you introduce the method books, what do you supplement with, or do you supplement those method books with creative activities?
Sure. So I often incorporate something that's integrated with that material. So if I'm using Piano Safari, there's lots of rote pieces and improvising pieces actually as part of that curriculum. And even if there's not, I will still do lots and lots of rote pieces, lots of improvising, get the students composing, get the students playing chords from a lead sheet, listening to things that they want to play on YouTube. And we've got a lot of Zelda music happening in our studio at the moment. And and we keep singing and playing games and transposing things into different keys as well.
Now, Beck, some of us as teachers are not very comfortable improvising ourselves and playing by ear. What advice do you have for us if we struggle with that ourselves?
Sure. So I think starting with some kind of boundary or some kind of backing track is really helpful. So, having an A minor chord progression and knowing my boundary is I can only use C and D and E. It's actually quite doable. Get together with another teacher and bravely try it together. But there are heaps and heaps and heaps of ideas for this in No Book Beginners, heaps of ideas for backing tracks, and lots of composers have written things as well that you can just use as a framework for what you're going to improvise with. So I know that you are interested in imagination and improvisation with my students, and animal stories are a big hit and a really easy first place to go for a teacher not sure about improvising. So one of my little students, Maddie, has been coming for 2 years, and she still wants to start with an animal story every lesson. And Rachel, I know that you're big on, creative stories and so on. So Maddie creates music that sounds like a polar bear or a teeny mouse and tells a story that intertwines them. And for older students, I love using this dragon image. Can you create music that sounds like glittering gold? Can you create the sound of wings unfolding or flying? And what does a fire breathing sound like? And that works in groups as well. And you can tell the story, the student can create the music, or the student can tell the story and you create the music, or some combination of that.
Yeah, I love that. And making sure that we don't put our own insecurities onto them, because they're kids. They have big imaginations, and they don't need to know that improvisation they don't even need to know the word, right? They just need to know the story and play some notes. And I like what you said about having parameters. I think that's really helpful for them not to feel overwhelmed by it. Great advice. Do you have any favorite games that you use with your students?
Yeah, so I've gone on a bit of a games hit since TopMusic started bringing out monthly games as part of my membership. So one of my favorites is Space Dice from Melodic Mentors. We have this dice that has music notes written on it, and as they roll it, if they know what it is, then we can move up on the game board. We use that a lot, and then I use that dice for other games as well. So thanks to Tara for that one. Cats in Hats from Busy Little Turtle has been a big favourite as well, not just because I'm a cat person, but also just because the students love being able to physically manipulate things. It's much more fun than holding up a flashcard. So anything from Busy Little Turtle, Melodic Mentors. I've actually started sticking the game boards up on my walls like little posters, and that actually helps me remember what I have. And the students go, "Oh, can we please play Space Dice today?" Yeah, if a student feels that the lesson is dry and boring and repetitive, they're actually less likely to understand and remember the content that you're working on. So this playfulness and fun and novelty, as we know, they produce really positive emotions. And Dr. Anita Collins is the Australian researcher, and she says every time we make an emotional connection, every time we set that reward network off in our students' brains, the enthusiasm they have for learning heightens. So I think it's great to make use of that dopamine hit that games bring and connect that in with learning and memory as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant to put them on the wall, because I put them in a notebook and then I forget that I have them, and then they just stay in the notebook and never come out. So I like that. Good tip there. Now, you really are a well-rounded teacher, because you also have sight reading resources that I want to mention. It's not just all improv and games in your studio. Tell us about the sight reading methods that you use with your students and that you've created.
Yeah, so I've created a series called Sight Reading Secrets that students can use at home, and there's exercises that they can do over multiple days, over multiple months, to gradually develop their sight reading skills. I know that a lot of people I speak to say their teachers didn't let them improvise or listen to music, certainly weren't allowed to listen to recordings of their pieces. They weren't allowed to try to, expressively communicate something in their own improvising until they'd learnt to read. And the teachers would say, well, I'm worried that if you don't learn sight reading, you won't be able to do it. But I feel the opposite. Well, I'm worried that if you don't listen and you don't express and you don't improvise, then maybe you won't learn how to do those things. So I think that sight reading is something that students can gradually work on step by step over years and months. It doesn't necessarily have to be the very first thing. Students often can express and create amazing things. It's much harder to teach them to be expressive and creative after 5 years and only read mechanically. But it's much easier to teach them to read if they already have all that musicality in them.
Yes, that is so true. And I was thinking back to my own lessons as a kid when you were talking, because I don't think I really had the improvisation or the imagination. I was a sight reader. And to this day, I struggle with the improvisation part of it. So I think you're right on that if we start with that, the rest can follow. I have to ask, how do you fit all of this into those lessons? How long are your lessons typically, and how do you fit everything in?
How do I fit everything in? I don't. But there's who says what's got to be involved in each lesson. Often my lessons are 30 minutes. So it needs to be very integrated. It needs to be something that relates well to other things, rather than something separate for theory and separate for this and separate for improv and separate for, if it's an integrated approach, it's easier for them to remember. And I just go very fast and get very tired.
Good answer.
Yeah, having resources they can then use at home means that some of those things that you would try to quote unquote fit into a lesson can be reminded at home. So if they've got a reminder rote video or they've got a backing track they can improvise with, then you kind of start them off in the lesson and then get them to continue that idea at home.
So we mentioned that you're part of the TopMusic team. And so that's how I got to know you a little bit. I want you to talk a little bit about about TopMusic and about the community aspect of TopMusic and what it can offer to piano teachers who might feel isolated in their teaching studio.
Well, isolated is a good word for me because we actually live 20 minutes away from even a supermarket on this farm. So in terms of getting together for professional development, collaborating with other teachers, it's very difficult for me to do that practically, but online it's fabulous. And I've met people all around the world, and teachers can gather together for a quick catch up and share what they're struggling with. We can do more formal catch ups on a particular topic online by a video call at a time that suits people from multiple different continents. And part of the TopMusic certification experience we had for last year was these collaborative 1-hour sessions that are jam-packed full of practical things that teachers are discussing in small groups with each other, things that relate directly to their studios, having aha moments and having me too moments. And having other teachers with you means, the smartest person in the room is the room. This collective intelligence is very important. So having the opportunity at TopMusic to be able to connect with other like-minded teachers and hone our own skills and be brave in taking new approaches and inspired by what other people are doing is a fabulous way for piano teachers to enjoy what they're doing and not just get through what they're doing.
Yeah. If this is the first time that a teacher's hearing about the TopMusic certification, could you just give us kind of a brief rundown of who it's for, what it involves, all of that?
Yeah, sure. So for teachers who are wanting to really enjoy their teaching and to develop skills in their business side of things, as well as their professional development as musicians, it's great for teachers to come and be part of this 12-week course with a 1-hour video conversation. It's not a webinar. It's actually get up and try this with each other, mock teaching with each other, talking about their students. and finding out how other people's studios are going, and hopefully improving their own income as part of that as well, and loving what they're doing. So as well as that 12 one-hour sessions, we have ongoing conversations in our Top Music forum during each week. And students, the teachers also create this portfolio that's directly related to their current teaching studio. Some teachers chose to develop, they have to work on something to do with studio, something to do with business, something to do with marketing, something to do with creativity, something to do with longevity of students and so on. But it's related to something that really affects them right there. So some people worked on their Google business profile, or some people worked on recording their own teaching and getting some feedback on that. So it's a pretty practical way to do PD, not like most things I've seen, which are kind of lecture format. All the resources we share, you don't have to go and buy 17 other textbooks and work through them madly. It's not academic separate from music. It's actually integrated together.
Great. And you're the head of certification. So I know that listeners are probably getting a lot of value out of this podcast. So if they want to work more with you, you're really hands-on in that certification, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm one of the facilitators of that certification. And I'm really grateful to Tim for starting the process for all the business side things and marketing and that money side of things. He's set up some great things for us to learn from there, and it's helped our students. Actually, he's just been asking the teachers who did certification last year, and all of them are coming back saying, oh yeah, I've doubled my studio, I've tripled my studio, I've increased my income but reduced my hours. So yeah, watch this space, because he's pretty excited by the business side of things. And yeah, I've been grateful to learn from him on that.
Can you share with us what you are excited about in coming up in the next few months, either at Top Music or beyond?
Sure. So many things. I'm having a solo festival with my students, which is a little bit like a recital, but the emphasis being on just enjoying one another's music. And I'm actually going to do that the day of the country fair in our locality, with the hope that they'll be all excited about this country fair. We can play, and then they can go off and eat fairy floss and cotton candy and, pat the sheep and so on, and have it in their minds as this integrated, fabulous day. I remember that fabulous day, which helps with piano retention and so on. And also, we have a new bunch of teachers who are signing up for certification in July. So I'm looking forward to working with Donna Hinckley, who's one of our facilitators, and just meeting some more teachers and, yeah, being excited about their studios alongside them.
Sounds like some exciting things coming up. If teachers want to connect more with you, where can they find you?
Sure. So you can find me at www.sightreading.com.au and you can also find me at Top Music. If you get in touch with us through, if you're not a member, you can just comment on some of the blog posts or something, and they'll get me in touch with you.
Great. Well, Beck, it has been so wonderful talking with you today. I loved learning from you. I learned a lot, and I know that our listeners did as well. So thank you for being here and giving your time to share with these other music teachers.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Rachel, for facilitating all of this and for sharing your creative animal story type things for our imaginations as well.
Thank you. As I was interviewing Rebecca for this episode, I kind of felt like my brain was spinning a little bit. I don't know if you could hear it in the interview, but I felt like she was saying so many great things that there were 100 questions and thoughts that popped into my head, and I didn't always know which one to go with next. I loved listening to Rebecca talk about how she chooses method books for her students, and then all the ways that she supplements those method books. It's clear that Rebecca is thoughtful and caring as a teacher, and her students are so lucky to have found her. If you got value out of this episode and want to continue working with Rebecca, I encourage you to explore the Top Music certification that is going to be running starting this summer. Head over to topmusic.co/certification to get all the details. That's the end of the show for this week. If you enjoyed the show, I would love for you to send me a DM on Instagram and let me know. You can find me at Rachel Airing. I'm Rachel Airing, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I'll talk with you soon.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our TopMusic Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, TopMusic Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.